a lot of people that are positioning themselves as a quote-unquote Web3 game, they're deceptive at best. They're not actually doing anything on-chain. Anybody can jump into Unreal Engine 5. That doesn't make it AAA. Nobody was really building AAA quality. Very few games envision building fully on-chain and in real time. Star Atlas is intended to never be complete and consistently evolve. The entire concept is that you can produce real value for yourself.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Next Billion podcast, where we're talking to the entrepreneurs, the builders, the people involved in onboarding the next billion people to crypto. And I'm here in my ghetto Airbnb, which doesn't work for various reasons. So a little bit different to the usual setup this week. But I'm here with a major GigaChad in the entire Solana and Web3 gaming ecosystem. I'm here with Michael Wagner from Star Atlas, and I'm really excited today to be talking about Web3 gaming in general, all the cool stuff which Star Atlas is doing. We recently spoke to a couple of Web3 gaming peeps as well with YGG and Stardust Economy. So Michael, thank you very much for coming on the podcast today and short notice changing up the time slots and everything like that.
No worries. And I'm here floating in space with a dysfunctional OBS background, but nevertheless, George, you and I were chatting a bit just before the recording started, and I feel like we relate on so many levels, both OGs in the space. You have me beat, which is pretty abnormal, but...
We're both old people in this space, man. You can count them on your hand that are still around. Actually, you know what? People that have been around for a long time, they tend to just be in it forever. They're not sort of drifting in and out of crypto. Like people that have been in it over a decade, I mean, you're here for the long run at that point. If you're still in this thing and still founding companies and doing stuff, you're pretty dedicated to the cause. I've definitely found that to be maybe a trait of people that have been in it over a decade is, people are sticking around and they're definitely in it for the long haul.
I think the test of metal is probably anyone that's been involved in the space for 4 years, and that could be at any given point in time, because historically that's essentially the entire cycle, right? You have the bull market and the bear market, and then the reemergence of one or the other within that time frame. So if you've stuck through a bear market, which they can be horrendous psychologically to deal with, then I think you're in it for the right reasons, but you're motivated by the potential of the technology, in it for the tech, as they say, and we certainly are. We see a lot of potential here, but what an exciting space. And, when a month feels like a year and a year feels like a decade, it's like a lifetime of experience for both of us.
Absolutely. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. Maybe we can start off with a little bit about yourself. Like, how did you find yourself in this crazy space? What was the crypto journey for you? Did you have a previous Web2 life before then? Gaming as well? Like, where did you get to where you are today?
I've told this story a lot of times, so I will try to keep it concise, but as an ex-finance guy, I was working in portfolio management, so investment and securities analysis. Previously, I hold a CFA charter, which is a financial designation, pretty difficult to obtain, but also a longtime gamer. And that's, it related to the work that we're doing now at Automata, the studio behind Star Atlas, but grew up in this computer group. We called ourselves the Lanarchists, and our weekends were eating pizza, drinking Mountain Dew, and playing video games, bringing our big...
That sounds awesome.
It was a lot of fun. I mean, some of my best experiences, childhood experiences for sure. We're lugging these big towers around, our CRT monitors, and just multiplayer gaming back in the days when broadband internet wasn't widely available. So a lot of fun, but let's fast forward to 2013, hanging out on a bike ride, actually, with one of my buddies from that group. We had been disconnected for a number of years after high school, reconnected, and he was talking to me about mining Bitcoin and mining script coins with GPUs. And I grew up building all my own PCs, and he was like, yeah, I have these milk crates in my house, and I have GPUs set up. I'm buying these old GPUs off of eBay. And I was captivated, went to his house with a 6-pack, and he showed me his setup and what he was doing. And it was like the next day, man, I had ordered all the parts that I needed. And this was a bit of an exploration for me, too, because I had no experience with, say, developing and specifically not working in Linux. And back then, it was like if you wanted to get involved in crypto, you kind of needed to be technically savvy. So setting up headless server infrastructure, SSH tunneling into those, and managing your GPU rigs, and then configuring and compiling software miners. So it was fun. It really engaged me. It was a technical challenge, but of course, I had ambitions to make money off of that. And I didn't. It was not profitable. This was like right at the tail end of 2013, market crashed 2014, but I was hooked. I was hooked just from that. And really over the years, just continued to explore every opportunity that I could find. That included being involved in like early Monero mining and ProtoShares and BitShares mining. Got connected with a good group, and we were really pioneering cloud mining in AWS back then. And anyway, just kept my interest. And by 2015, I was actually talking to the RIAs, registered investment advisors, the private wealth management groups that I was working at. I was saying, look, we should put clients in Bitcoin. We should get them involved in crypto. And everybody, the stigma was so bad. They were like, don't even talk about that in the office, you know? And so by 2015, I was like, you know what? I'm just going full-time crypto, giving up the career, taking the leap. And I did. And I just traded for a while, traded a little portfolio that actually performed well going into 2016. Bull market was kind of kicking off. End of 2016, launched my first company that was called Tokes. It operated at the intersection of crypto and legal cannabis. The idea was to use crypto infrastructure and blockchain to provide financial solutions, and a number of successes there. Fast forward again to 2020, we helped pass some legislation in the state of Nevada to introduce a tokenized closed loop financial ecosystem for the cannabis industry. We were prepared to launch. Pandemic hit. Government shut down. Our opportunity shut down. And it was really through that company that I had recruited Jacob Floyd and Danny Floyd, who are co-founders at Automata and Star Atlas, and just went to the drawing board with them and said, look, DeFi is still popping off right now. NFTs are doing well. The idea of crypto gaming is emerging. And these are guys that are also passionate gamers, have built many mobile applications. Danny himself has worked 20 years in AAA game development. And when I brought the idea and said, hey, let's do a blockchain game, we have some downtime, I don't think I've ever seen them work that hard. Super passionate about the concept, and much credit to Danny for pulling together the game design doc. And the idea of Star Atlas was born. And by January of 2021, we had launched the vision and white paper, and I'm sure we'll get into the rest. But that was my concise version of my background.
Very cool. And you know what? It is a very broad vision. I mean, you're setting your sights literally at the stars as well with what you guys are aiming to do, like AAA games. And, a lot of people, I guess, in the Web3 space, they start with maybe a 2D game, and they maybe go from there and see if it's a success. And in the gaming world, just like, building a mobile app, right? Like not everything is always a success. So maybe talk a little bit about the process involved in making a game, right? Like I know that I've played a lot of games in my days. It used to be that you could smash out a game in a few years, like back in the day, right? Mm-hmm. When we were growing up, like a new Halo would come out and maybe they'd be working on it for like 2 or 3 years. Something like that. Mm-hmm. But it seems like the development timelines are just getting longer and longer. And is that because it's becoming more and more complex? Like, what is involved in building a game? So when you're there, you're in Nevada and you're like, man, we're going to make a game, a crypto game. What's involved in that?
Well, a lot, and a lot more than what people probably envision it to take. And I guess what I would say is perhaps in hindsight, it would have been easier to pursue a simpler game and kind of demonstrate that product market fit with some type of MVP. But I've never been afraid of a challenge. And in fact, I like setting highly aspirational goals for myself, as does the co-founding team and many people across our company. So we figured if we're going to do this, we're going to do this big and we're going to do it right. And nobody was really building anything that was anywhere near AAA quality at the time. There were very few games that envisioned building fully on chain and in real time, which is also a component of our vision. A lot of this was like turn-based or card style game. But in terms of what goes into it, I would cover at least 2 points. First, you need this team of really incredible people, highly talented in specialized skill sets, and you need a large team, especially for a high quality game. I mean, if you're talking about some of the biggest studios in the world, the most established, the Blizzards, these are teams of 1,000 or 1,500 people or more.
Really?
Yes. Wow. And, we started with 4. So yeah. A big part for us in this journey was, well, how do we recruit the people that we need, which came with its own set of challenges, simply because the most talented people have a perception of crypto as well. And, we approach them and we say, we want to associate your name with this product that we're building. And their immediate thought is, well, is this a scam? Or again, just the degree of skepticism that exists out there. Am I affiliating myself with something that will have a bad reputation in the future? So it's not just a question of, hey, we'll pay you X amount of dollars, but can we convince them that the story is real enough that they actually want to build on this. And the best creators in the world too, these are projects of passion for them. It's not even a question of like how much money can they make, are the wages competitive, but is this something that I can see myself working on for years or a decade? Because to your exact point, games in this era take approximately 8 to 10 years for the most highly polished and best gameplay experiences. So there was a lot of convincing that needed to take place. Fortunately, we were able to outline the vision in a way that attracted people to the project. After a while, it just had this inertia to it, and people wanted to come and work with us, and they could see what we were delivering. But on the actual game development side, and I will be the first to admit that I'm not the most experienced in this space. This is why I have a great team of people around me and great co-founders who have subject matter expertise. But building AAA, I think it's a term that's thrown around a lot right now, especially in Web3.
It is. And there's no real qualification for it as well. Everyone's like, yeah, I'm building a AAA game. Okay, well, what does that mean? Like, is there any metrics for that?
Exactly. And I think, so the immediate thing that people go to is graphical fidelity. How does it look? But even that, there's a wide-ranging scale of graphical fidelity. Now, anybody can jump into Unreal Engine 5 and start, downloading Megascan assets and start configuring a map and importing models, but that doesn't make it AAA, even if it looks pretty good at the surface level. You probably saw this, George, but we just released a promotional video of our Pierce X6, a ship model in our game, and literally every line, every detail, every groove in that ship is modeled into it. They're all polygons. This is not texturing. But beyond that, the things that make it feel real, that make it feel immersive, include the visual effects, the thrusters, the sound effects go so far. I mean, when you hear a ship start up and you hear it accelerate, you can immediately associate yourself with the sense of realism. Same thing with the background music that's playing. And then one thing that I would point out, and for anyone that's listening that hasn't seen it, on our YouTube, highly encourage you to check out that Pierce X6 video, because the engineering on the ship itself, the way that the landing gear retracts into the ship when it's taking off, is actually realistic. I mean, I feel like this is a ship that could be manufactured in real life if we wanted to. And the blueprints are those that Tesla or SpaceX would use in manufacturing a ship, right? And then one additional thing is we have a professional architect on the team that actually looks at the interior design and layout. Does it feel like you would want it to feel if you really were flying around in space and had to live in your spaceship for months on end? So like comfort level. These are all things that we think about just in a single asset creation. And I guess expanding beyond that, though, what makes a game a great game and a AAA game is also the storytelling behind it. So, lore, what is the background? Can you put yourself in this distant future and again, believe that you actually exist there? And otherwise, mission systems, the quest systems that will exist. And also, there's a lot here. The economic layer, right? Like, is it incentivizing to play? The sense of progression with your character, does that work well? Is it balanced well so that you feel rewarded when you achieve something in the game? All of these things go into AAA game development, and all of these things need to be best in class to truly call yourself AAA. And these are the things that we think about on a daily basis.
Yeah, and you know what? I was thinking of this the other day. There's a lot of elements that Star Atlas pulls from different genres, all right? So you've got some elements of classical MMO, right? It's a multiplayer game and, you're interacting with people and there's like a social fabric of some description there, right? There's an economy, which I think is a very important thing, which you've mentioned a few times on different spaces and stuff that we've done. Maybe we can talk a little bit about that because, one of the thoughts I had was when I go to play games, often there's some games which I play once and then I finish and then I'm done. It's like, hey, cool, that was a great game, but I never go back to it. And then there's some games which I've found myself, it's like 15 years ago or something in my Steam list somewhere. And I'm still just playing those games because they're just fundamentally fun. I guess people like to talk about World of Warcraft a lot. That's a game with very long, history and people are still playing it. When building a game, and, looking at these economic elements as well, I guess you guys have to be thinking about decades ahead, literally, to be building something like this, right? Like, what thinking goes into building an economy when you might not know what is happening 10 years from now or something like that, like in the game economy?
It's such a great question and also so accurate, because I think for us, the economy is particularly important because of this value proposition of having crypto-based assets in the game, the entire concept is that you can produce real value for yourself. You have the asset ownership through the NFT structure. You have a cryptocurrency denominated in-game economy. You have a governance structure denominated in a token as well. But all of this intersects with the real world because it's all tied directly into decentralized exchanges or centralized exchanges, these liquid and fervent, maybe not so much right now, but these crypto markets that exist, right? So it all ties into the real economy as well. And what that implies is you're not insulated from real world events in the game itself, which is how traditionally and historically every game has operated, right? If you're earning gold in WoW, even though there are these black markets where you can go buy and sell that and trade that, it doesn't matter if the economy outside is collapsing. It doesn't impact your gold reserves in the game, but it does in Star Atlas, because if the crypto markets are tanking, which, again, bull and bear market cycles, well, that directly impacts the value of the currency in the game itself. So there's a lot to think through. This is the area where my particular expertise is probably most applicable, but we do have a really phenomenal team of economists, 5 economists, a couple of analysts, a couple of directors, and head of. One of them is a PhD that we recruited. And as we continue to scale that econ team, I think it's going to be important to hire these PhDs who can think academically about macro and microeconomic events, not only in the world, but within the game, in the structuring of this. And what I would also suggest is that when we think of the economy, it's really not just the currency in the game. Like, the economy applies to virtually every aspect. It is pervasive through all aspects of the game, even things like character progression and balance. The way that you earn XP, that is an economic model that goes into defining how quickly or how rapidly or how long does it take for somebody to progress through the level system.
It affects gameplay, right? Like, if the mega spaceship becomes like half the price or something overnight, that might significantly affect people in the game world and how they interact and what they do and how they progress and all that sort of stuff as well, right?
It does. This is a long journey. To your point, we are thinking decades ahead. To go on a quick tangent, our vision for Star Atlas and this path to decentralization is that at some point in time, it's not reliant on the features that we build, but it's because we've produced infrastructure and primitives and on-chain programs and these permissionless systems that other people can create content surrounding that going into the future. It's Star Atlas is a product that is intended to never be complete and consistently evolve over time. So 100 years from now, and we could be long gone, but Star Atlas still exists in a completely different state because the world at large and the contributors to the ecosystem have been building it, right? In fact, I just gave a presentation yesterday, and the title of it was Building a Digital Society, which is really kind of how I think about it. There's a game at the center of this. There's an entertainment experience at the center of this, but what we're building is so much larger than that in terms of who can participate, who can contribute, and how does value get exchanged between all of those people, the users, the producers, and otherwise consumers of entertainment. But an objective of mine long term is to shift the paradigm of how people think about something like Atlas. So at the early stage, people are kind of denominating it back in their domestic currency. If you earn Atlas, well, how much USD is that worth, or how much GBP is that worth to me today? But ultimately, if we have a flourishing economy in game, people are transacting entirely in that currency. So they would care less about the exchange rate. They'd care more about what is my purchasing power in Atlas currency within the game environment. Can I do things with this? And the analogy that I often use is whatever you get paid in your paycheck, again, if that's Canadian dollar, well, at no point when it's being deposited into your bank account are you thinking, well, what is the exchange rate with the Canadian dollar and the euro? Because I want to convert to euro. You just think, well, I earn Canadian dollars and I can spend Canadian dollars. At some point in the future of Star Atlas, Atlas will have the same effect. Hey, I earned X amount of Atlas and I know that I can buy these things with that amount of Atlas. And that's how I value it, not based on some external rate. So it's a long path to get there and to establish that, but it's one that I'm excited for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess we spoke a little bit before we hit record about maybe some of the friction that can happen between making or people that have come from the Web2 world in, say, game development and getting into the Web3 world. And, one thing I always hear a lot is, crypto's too hard, right? But the rebuttal that I often say to this is, hey, literally like millions of people came for NFTs over the last couple of years, and they all learned how to self-custody that money. They got crypto somehow, they got a wallet somehow, they were on these NFT marketplaces somehow, which are complicated things where you connect your wallet and do all sorts of stuff. So like people can learn. I guess what's some of the challenges that you found in either hiring or even just talking to whoever it might be, investors or other peeps, about building an actual Web3 game? And yes, the easier road might be, yeah, man, just have a username and a password and just make it all sort of Web2 and you just click a button and it all works. But why don't go down that path? Like, what's the benefit of going like full Web3?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those areas where, again, ideologically, you and I are so aligned. Is we got involved in crypto at a time where it was even more difficult. I don't want to sound like the guy, back in my day. Like I said, though, I mean, I was learning how to set up Linux rigs so that I could tie into my GPU miners.
By the way, do you remember Butterfly Labs back then?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, that was great. I had some of those. I went and flew in their plane once when I went to inspect the miners if they actually existed.
I never got the invite to the plane ride, but
I literally just turned up because that's all you can do, right?
But, I mean, things do progressively get easier. I guess what I would suggest is that regardless of the difficulty of getting involved in the ecosystem, crypto at large, we've seen continuous growth. Like, it's undeniable that, your time since 2011, my time since 2013, we've seen explosive growth. And that's because of, well, a lot of financial interest, people getting in because they see it as an opportunity to maybe change their lifestyle if they can trade well. But we've seen innovation in the financial services that are available, things like DeFi. That was a big draw to people into the space. What I do think is that gaming is going to be a core attraction to new users because we're offering this entertainment product that people will want to consume. And I think where that conflicts with the business mentality is, okay, well, the easiest thing for us to do to grow as quickly as possible is to obfuscate all of these concepts of the blockchain away. Don't make them learn how to secure and store a seed phrase. And why don't we just set up a 2.5 platform where, the custody is actually all on our servers and we have all of the assets. But first of all, we don't want that responsibility. We don't want to be the one custodying people's assets. But beyond that, what I genuinely believe is that crypto itself is a new paradigm. It is this idea of self-sovereign store of wealth. And I feel obligated to teach people about those benefits. The whole purpose of the technology is underpinned with that ideology. So there's a lot of internal discussion and debate about like how do we simplify the process. But the last thing I want to do is completely obfuscate the technology away because it comes with these philosophical ideas that people benefit from. And the argument that I hear oftentimes is the TCP/IP argument. It's like, you're on the internet all day, you don't care how TCP/IP works. Well, TCP/IP doesn't come with the philosophical underpinnings of crypto either. So I think we're doing a disservice to the user if we don't at least encourage understanding what it is that they're participating in. There's all these other benefits that come alongside it, but to me that is very important. So again, trying to strike the balance between how much do we require users to participate in and handle upfront versus providing a more simplified onboarding process, giving them a sample of the experience, but at the same time encouraging them to go down the path of self-information. And that's where we're trying to go. And that includes things like building out free-to-play aspects of our different gaming products. So, okay, you don't have to set up a wallet. You also don't own the assets, but you can at least try out the game. And if you like it, here's an in-game tutorial mission wrapped in lore that teaches you about crypto and about setting up a wallet. And you feel like you're accomplishing something. You don't feel like it's a burden, right? You feel like you're playing the game, but you're actually setting up a crypto wallet. That's the direction that I want to take it.
Yeah, that's very good. I mean, I and maybe a lot of people from our generation learned quite a bit from, say, Age of Empires, right? So like you can actually learn things through a gaming experience, which is quite good. But I guess the question is the messaging side. Like, how do we get the messaging out to people that perhaps don't understand all of the intricacies and the philosophy behind it? Like, if we have to have a philosophical debate before anyone plays a game, it's just not going to work, right? So is there maybe a better way that we should be doing messaging? Is it demos? Is it appealing to crypto native people in the first place? Is it partnering with influencers to talk about, how good it is, stuff like that? Like, how do you get the messaging out about this whole sort of paradigm shift of, Web3 gaming in general?
So that is the part that I think we need to be sensitive to. And I don't think that it needs to be right on the nose. I don't think it needs to be the first thing that people learn about. I default back to, this is why I think gaming is so powerful, is we're giving them a reason to engage. And that reason is, hey, we built a fun product that you want to play. And through time and through their engagement, they'll be more interested in actually exerting the effort necessary to educate themselves. But I think if you go right out and say, we want you to play, but we need you to learn all of these things first, well, that feels like going to school, and maybe you don't see the value proposition there. So it's kind of enticing them, putting a carrot on the stick. And again, to me, gaming is the great feature set that will do that. For some people, it's financial motivation. And again, I think that's why crypto has been so successful at acquiring people through all these cycles, because a lot of people feel that they have the potential to generate wealth by participating in these markets. They're willing to go out and spend the time and effort to figure these things out because there's an incentive on the other side, which happens to be, financial gains potentially. Now, of course, you lose some of those people in the down cycle, but we also retain some people. And so it is compounding through time. But I guess to shortly answer your question, it really is, how good is the gaming experience? And is that enough to encourage people to come into the ecosystem? And then through time, gently and delicately, they get more informed.
Yeah. And I want to also touch on something you said before about building for the long term and getting people involved in the long term and having a lot of perhaps user generated content as well. Mm-hmm. How I would, from my perspective, look at a lot of these Web2 gaming companies is they're very focused on their IP, mm-hmm. right? It's like everything is, we own everything, we have to do everything. Like I wish more games had mod packs or the ability to build mods for them in these days. But it's not really a thing, I don't think, that anymore. Is that perhaps one of the benefits of crypto ecosystem in general or Web3 gaming in general? Perhaps even if you have a very close-knit sort of control over the IP, there's always stuff on chain which is going to be happening, right? Like if everything's an NFT and there's someone that has an NFT lending protocol, they could very easily spin up a new lender. It becomes the biggest thing in the world. And then they go and add Star Atlas spaceships to that. And now you can, boom, that's something that Star Atlas didn't build, was some external thing that didn't even know about, but it's something that adds value, I guess, to the game as well. What's your take on the role of, say, IP versus keeping it as user owned as possible?
Well, you're throwing up a softball on that one, but I couldn't agree more. In fact, I think it's the largest benefit to even incorporating Web3. I'll just go out and say, I think a lot of people that are even positioning themselves as a quote unquote Web3 game, they're deceptive at best. Like they're not really Web3 games. They're not actually doing anything on chain. Maybe they have NFTs included, but a lot of times it's like, well, we're going to get NFTs in the future, but they're building a game, which is admirable in its own right. But I think it's disingenuous to say I'm a Web3 game when they don't really have any blockchain integration. We've gone far on the other spectrum, which is, again, the NFTs, the crypto economy, the governance structure, but also on-chain gaming logic and architecture, which is to say that actions that you're performing in-game, things like, moving around the map or extracting resources or crafting something or engaging in combat, these are all systems that we've built that are Solana programs. So to your exact point, anybody can actually tap into those programs and build their own extensions. That's just on the tech side. On the gaming side, there's also the idea of building out mods, to your point, or even building out entire storylines. It could be a single player mission that leverages the Star Atlas NFTs and IP that creator is able to monetize. And one of the most difficult things about building an expansive game or an MMO is the constant demand for new content to consume. And I'm guilty of this as a consumer of gaming products. It's like, okay, I already played through this expansion that you released. Yeah. It took me a week, right? And your next expansion is coming in a year now. So what's next, right? Now I'm going to go play a new game. But if you can empower a world of creators to build content on your behalf, they can monetize it. We get new content that we didn't create, and the users have access to either features or content that they can consume. Well, that's a very synergistic and win-win-win scenario for everyone involved. And maybe just to close out on the IP side, admittedly, we took a bit of a note out of the BAYC book with their progressive stance on IP usage, and we recently released an IP policy through build.staratlas.com. And what we've done as a first step is told people, you can use the Star Atlas branding, the Star Atlas IP, and you can build a real business, a physical world business out of this and generate up to $1 million in gross revenue with no royalty fees, no licensing fees due to us whatsoever. Beyond that, there is a royalty fee that on average is between 3 and 6%. The highest royalty fee is 10%. But if your business is successful, then yes, there's a revenue share component. But before that, you're free to try out what you want to do. We've already received 45 applications from people in our community to build. We already have 4 or 5 different companies that are online selling merchandise, t-shirts, apparel, computer equipment. We also see people selling 3D printed models of our ships. I've seen jewelry. So we're already seeing like all kinds of usage of the IP, and I couldn't be happier, right? We get this great exposure to our brand, and we're giving an opportunity for someone to build a business around this, and hopefully it works out, because at some point then it's also a revenue stream for us. So I think this is the approach to the future, trying to build a walled garden around your IP and retain all rights to it. I think limits the potential of any organization, actually. And this is almost antithetical to the capitalist model, which I'm a big proponent of capitalism. You would think that, hey, if we own all the rights, then we're going to capture all the value. But what they're ignoring is the idea that other people can create value for your brand as well. And if you let them create value for your brand and let them capture some of that, then the exponential growth in it is going to be significantly higher than had you just tried to follow the conventional path.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's probably something like a Windows example or something like that. Like Windows is a software, it's a license that you can use, and you pay money to Microsoft to use it. But then people build a whole bunch of other stuff with Windows that also make money. So it's utilizing some of those assets and Star Atlas to create real businesses. To finish up here, what's going on for the rest of 2023? Because we spoke a little bit a couple of weeks ago or a month ago or something like that on the Spaces about some of the really cool things that you guys are doing, like the on-chain movements across the grid and stuff like that. But what else is in the development cycle this year? We're in a bear market. It's hard to build. There's been various setbacks along the way, FTX blowing up and all of this nonsense. Yeah. But what's coming through the pipeline for the Star Atlas team?
The short answer is a lot. We've already had an incredibly busy year. We've had probably 8 major milestone releases just since January. Won't go through all of those. You covered one of them. That was what we call escape velocity. So for the audience, at Automata, our flagship product is developed in Unreal Engine, but we actually have multiple environments that we're building across. One of those is in browser. These are all WebGL 3D assets developed in Play Canvas. We also have a mobile application on the way as well. But in the browser application is where we're deploying most of these on-chain programs to start. And we launched this movement test called Escape Velocity, and this is a Cartesian coordinate system and on-chain movement in real time. We gamified this by making it a bit of a scavenger hunt. So this is available now at sage.staratlas.com. You can spawn a fleet and you can move around this map. And what's kind of cool is you almost see this, it's almost like fungus moving around the map, because we don't render all of the other player ships, but we have on the grid, you can see the player density based on the color of that tile. And so you can actually see people moving around just as the color shifts around the map. And I think it's one of the coolest things.
I love that.
Yeah. But we've also introduced a loot table. So as part of this test, to incentivize it, you can go out and find ships, or you can find resources, exclusive items like posters and skins. So there's a lot of fun stuff in the loot. And that's going to be running for a bit longer. But we also just recently released, I want to say it was maybe 10 days ago, we rolled out our showroom product, which is part of that flagship line in Unreal Engine. It's a version 2.1, ton of new features in there, jetpacking, full on-chain marketplace integration. You can now fly all 49 ships that are available on the market. We've gone through and done a complete refactor of all of the ship physics. So every one of those ships has a unique flight model. But if you own one of those ships, it's in your wallet. It's connected through Unreal Engine. We did build the SDK specifically so we could build the world's first Solana wallet in UE. But you connect your wallet that works with Ledger. You can actually load your ship and fly any of those around now. But the big release or feature that we introduced with 2.1 was part of what's coming up for the rest of the year, and that is a ground hover racing course.
Right? Yes, I saw that, I think. Yeah.
I've been describing it as kind of like a Mario Kart or
like Star Wars Racer or something, like N64.
That's right. Yeah, so right now it's single player time trial, so you're just racing the clock, but the very next release will have authoritative server support, which means we have the backend server infrastructure. This is also really exciting. We're working with an emerging tech company, and we think we're going to break records with user concurrency in a single instance But that's coming online in the next release, and then it becomes multiplayer combat racing. So you're racing through this course, you're picking up boosts like shields and ammunition and missiles, fuel, and through the use of those, you can disable other ships. And, this turns into an entire racing series. And alongside this, with the next release, we're targeting to introduce real progression as well. And if you're an MMO player, like that is the addictive component of gameplay. When you level up your character, I don't know how many times I've been like, all right, I just want to get this next level and then I'll log out, but I'm hooked until I get that level. And so we're planning on introducing character progression. You can configure your ship, you can level it up, you can select components. So even if I'm flying a Lobi and you're flying a Lobi, the way that I've configured my ship might make me more competitive than you, or vice versa. But that's kind of the core loop for Showroom for the remainder of this year, is focusing on that competitive combat racing loop. The DAO is officially coming online very, very soon. I don't know when this will be aired, but might be out by the time this goes live. But it's something that we've put a ton of time and effort into, and it's something that's in high demand. We already have a community proposal, which we call PIPs, Polis Improvement Proposals, that has essentially a request to use treasury assets from the DAO itself to purchase some faction claims from us, which allows the DAO to be productive and generate a recurring revenue stream for itself. That would be another long tangent, but I'll just say our DAO has been producing revenue now for over a year and a half. It goes into multi-sig cold storage. Wallet hasn't been touched because until we get the governance structure fully online, those assets belong to the DAO, and it's a question of how they want to deploy those. But very excited about proposals and voting coming online soon. It's a big step forward in decentralized governance for us. Otherwise, mobile app, I won't share too much there, but we're expecting that to come out this year. And a couple of conferences. So we're at the Play GG event in July. This is in San Diego. It buttresses the Comic-Con conference, but this is hosted by Solana, the Solana Games team. We're excited about presenting there. And then really the next big one for us is Breakpoint, again, at the end of October. But heavily focused on Solana. They've been very supportive, and we're excited about the developments within that ecosystem.
Absolutely. And I can't wait to meet you in person at Breakpoint as well. It's going to be on us sooner than we think. Wrapping things up, it's been a pleasure talking. Where should people go to find out more about Star Atlas? You've got the website, you've got blogs, you've got guilds, there's the Twitter, of course, but where should people go?
Yeah, I mean, great content on all of those. Our Medium is great. Like you said, the staratlas.com website is just beautiful, worth checking out. But really, I send people to Discord. We have a vibrant community. Yeah. Even in this market, there's 200,000 people in there. I don't know how many are actually still in there talking, but there is conversation going on every day. The co-founders are in there. A lot of the people from the team are in there. We're answering questions all the time. But our community is very supportive about bringing new people in too, and helping them get up to speed. There's a lot happening. So discord.gg/staratlas is the link. But you can also find that on our Star Atlas website, or really any of our websites. But definitely encourage people to get engaged with the community now. They're welcoming, and they'll help you get up to speed.
Absolutely. And there's so many community initiatives going on, a lot of people building. I mean, we've also been building on Star Atlas with a lot of the data stuff that we've been interacting with for since whenever you guys started with the posters, right? The AR stuff, we had that on Step. Yeah. So it's really great to see. Yeah, look, everyone go and check it out. Star Atlas is one of the core projects, I would say, in Web3. Super excited to see what happens there. But Michael, thank you so much for being on the podcast today and sharing your insights, and we'll talk again soon.
It was my pleasure. And just to dovetail on your last comment, we love Step. Recommend people go there, manage their assets, see their whole portfolio. But it was a pleasure, George. Look forward to meeting you in person, and we'll do this again sometime.
Thanks so much. Right. Cheers.